now.
Hi, I got your profile for evaluation, and this is going to be an interview where I'm going to ask you questions about Java 8, Spring Boot, and microservices. So let's get started with the interview. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Okay, so I have around 2.5 years of experience working as a Java backend developer. My technical skill set includes Java, Spring Boot. I know writing REST APIs, and I have worked upon microservices. And apart from this, I know SQL database. So that is about my technical skill set.
Okay, so that's great. If I ask you to rate yourself in Spring Boot out of 5, how much would you rate yourself out of 5?
So if you ask me around 5 questions, I will try to answer at least 4 questions.
Okay, so you rate yourself as 4.
3.5 to 4, yes.
All right, perfect. So I think let's get started. So how can I configure and use two data sources in my Spring Boot application? So I have one Spring Boot application and I want to configure two data sources in the same application. So how can I achieve this in Spring Boot?
Okay, so you are going to connect to two different databases, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So for this, you need to configure your database properties, like you need to provide your data source URL, username, password, and maybe a driver class name in your application.properties file. So you need to make two entries, one for first database, another for second database. Let us consider you are using first database as a Oracle database, another database maybe MySQL or any other database, PostgreSQL database. So for this, you need to configure these properties like URL, username, password, and driver class name. After that, in your Spring Boot application in Java code, you need to configure a class for configuration. So you can use a direct configuration annotation for that particular class. And you need to create two bins for these two data sources. So your bin should be of type data source. And in that bin, you can configure your properties, or you can use a direct configuration properties annotation, and you can provide data source name, or you can read the value of your data source in your configuration file. And you can make one of the bin as a primary bin. So whenever your database tries to connect with, whenever your application tries to connect with database, so that primary bin will indicate that that will be your primary database. So in this way, you can configure your different data sources or databases in your application.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So my next requirement is while the application is loading, while your Spring Boot application is loading for the first time, I want to load some data set in my H2 database. So when my application is loading, I want to load a data set in my H2. How will you achieve this in Spring Boot?
Okay, so you have to load some data into your application, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So you can configure one of the SQL file. You can call it as a data.sql file and keep it into your SRC main resources folder. So whenever your application starts, it will load that particular data.sql file, and it will, if you are writing some code, or if you want to load some data, you can write insert statements inside that file, and those insert statements will get executed when your application gets started. So that will make some entries into your database table. So in this way, you can achieve your requirement.
Yeah, perfect. Do you know what is profile in Spring Boot?
Yes, so there are different kind of profile. Like if you want your application to be used in dev environment, you can set a dev profile, or you can have a QA profile for QA environment, or you can have production environment or production profile for your client use, client environment. So you have different kind of profiles like dev, QA, or production.
Okay. So as you mentioned, there might be different profiles, dev, QA, or production. I want to make my QA profile as the active profile. How will you make this profile as active in your application?
So you can do one thing inside your application.properties file. You can have a flag spring.profile.active, and you can set the profile name which you want to make it as active. So you can use application.properties or application.yaml file to configure the active profile. Otherwise, while starting application, if you are starting it from command line, then you can use -d command along with string.profile.active property and the value of your profile.
Yeah. So that's it. Perfect. What is starter dependency in your Spring Boot module?
We have different starter dependencies provided by Spring Boot. So you can use like Spring Boot data JPS data that will help you to perform Spring Boot database operations. You can use test starter Spring Boot starter test that will help you to write test cases for your code. Then you can use Spring Boot security starter that will help you to make your application secure. Then you can use Spring Boot web starter to make your application as a web application. So these are the different starter dependencies available or provided by Spring Boot.
Yeah. Perfect. So what are the basic annotations that are provided by your Spring Boot?
So there are lots of annotations which are provided in Spring Boot. The very first annotation is @Spring Boot application annotation. So when your application gets started, that is the first annotation which Spring Boot uses. Then we have enable auto configuration. If you want to your application automatically enable some configurations, then you can use this enable auto configuration, or you can use component scan annotation that is actually included inside your Spring Boot application annotation to scan all the components which are available into your application. Then there are other annotations like get mapping, post mapping, put mapping, or delete mapping to execute your requests, HTTP request. You have bean annotation that can indicate that uh, uh, you have uh, a bin, or your that method is going to return a bin. So these are few basic annotations which you can use in your Spring Boot application.
Yeah. Perfect. So how to disable specific configuration for a class, for a specific class?
Okay, so you can use exclude attribute of at direct enable auto configuration annotation. So Spring Boot provides at direct enable auto configuration annotation to enable the auto configuration. But if you want to exclude a specific class, then you can use at direct enable auto configuration with exclude attribute, and with that exclude attribute, you can provide your class name to be excluded, so that will not be auto configured.
All right. Okay. Perfect. So can you tell me on which port by default the Spring Boot application starts?
So Spring Boot application by default starts on port 8080.
Okay. And if I want to change that port, then can you change that port?
Yes, we can change the port number. So you can do it by using application.properties file or application.yaml file, where you can mention server.port property with a different value. So if you want to make it like 8081, then you can use server.port equal to 8081. So that will bring your application up on 8081 port.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So consider that I have defined some properties in my application.properties file, and I want to access those properties in my code. Then is there a way to achieve this functionality in Spring Boot?
Yes. So let us consider there is a property like spring.application name is defined in your application the properties, and you want to use that property into your Java code. So you can use a direct value annotation, and that a direct value annotation requires the property name. So you can use a direct value, then inside brackets you can use a dollar sign and curly brackets, and inside that curly brackets you need to mention the property name. So that property name will be loaded into your Java code, and that a direct value annotation can be bound with your variable. So that variable will have that property value which is available in your Spring Boot application, the properties file.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. So let's move on to the next question. What are the different logging levels? Uh, applicable in Spring Boot?
So we have different logging levels like info, debug, error, or trace. So these are the different logging levels you can use in your application.
Okay. And how can I set a specific logging level in my Spring Boot application?
So you can use logging level property in your Spring Boot application. Not properties file. Let us consider you want to make a debug as your logging level. So you can use logging.level as a debug in application.properties file.
Yeah. So that's about your Spring Boot. Let's move on to some core Java related questions. What are new features that were introduced in Java 8?
Can you please repeat? I'm not able to hear you.
What are the new features that were added in Java 8?
So in Java 8, we have Lambda expression stream APIs. We have string joiner class. We have uh, uh, Lambda expression stream API, string joiner class, functional interface, static and default methods. So these are the few features which are available in Java 8.
Okay. So could you just let me know what is functional interface in Java 8?
So functional interface is an interface which contains exactly one abstract method, and you can use a direct functional interface annotation to denote that interface as a functional interface.
Okay, perfect. So consider an example. I have a legacy code in which there are some operations that I perform for each loop. I just iterate over the list and perform some operations. So will you be able to convert this code to Java 8 if I give you an opportunity to convert this code to Java 8?
Yes, we have for each loop which is available in Java 8, so we can use for each loop.
Yeah, sounds good. Perfect. Could you briefly explain me about the microservices architecture?
Yeah. So in microservice architecture, we have API gateway. Basically, it is used to route your request which is coming from client to backend microservices. Then you can have Eureka server to discover all the microservices which are available in your application. You can use Hystrix or Resilience 4J for fault tolerance. Then you can configure different microservices at the backend which will have a different functionalities. Then yeah, so these are the few things which should be there in your microservice architecture.
Okay, all right. And which part of this microservices architecture you have worked on in your project?
So I know API gateway, I know Eureka server, I know how to create different set of microservices, how to connect these microservices, how to use databases with microservices. So these are the few things on which I worked on.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. So one last question. What are the different types of constraints in the database?
So in database, we have different type of constraints like primary key for null check constraint or unique key. So basically, these constraints are used to check the values. It is a kind of conditions for your data.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I'm done from my side. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't have any question. I'm good. Thank you.
No. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.
Bye.